Today, we are going to learn all US state names in French, but I won't just give you a list of them like every other teacher does. I will tell you exactly what you need to do to remember them and have them when you need it. Because as a French coach, it is my job to make sure that you don't just learn French, but you are actually able to use what you learn. And at the end of the video, I will let you in on the secret to always having the right French words when you need them. And I will illustrate that with an adventure that I had also involving my dad and a stripper. So let's get into it. So there are 5 colors on this map, but as you can see, most states are in blue or in red. This is because French has 2 genders and every noun in French is either masculine or feminine, and the names of states are no exception. For countries and states, the rule is that if a French country name ends with E, it is feminine. If it does not end with E, it is then masculine. There will be a few exceptions, as you will see. Let's start first with the feminine states. So the feminine states, as I said, they have their name that end in E. Their names also have been translated. So more commonly, the final A was changed to an E in French. They are also all located on the coasts, and only La Californie is on the west coast. All the others are on the east coast. I believe the names were translated because those are the oldest states, and when something has been known to the French for longer, the name is more likely to be translated into French. This is why a cake is un gâteau, but a donut is un donut. So when a state or a country is feminine, we will use the preposition en to refer to living in this state or doing something in this state. We will say la Pennsylvanie and je suis en Pennsylvanie. So the same goes for la Californie, en Californie, la Virginie, en Virginie, la Virginie occidentale, en Virginie occidentale, la Caroline du Nord, la Caroline du Sud et en Caroline du Nord ou du Sud, la Géorgie, en Géorgie, la Floride, en Floride, la Louisiane, en Louisiane. To remember them, if they are big and on the coast, then they are feminine and their final A has become an E. Now on to the masculine states, which you can see in blue on the map. These are the majority of the states. Their names haven't been translated with the exception of Le Nouveau-Mexique. Their name doesn't end with E most of the time, except for Le Nouveau-Mexique again, and those whose English names already end with an E and weren't translated because borrowed English nouns are masculine. This general rule trumps the lesser rule for country genders. So those that end with E and haven't been translated and therefore are masculine are Le Maine, Le Delaware, Le New Hampshire, and Le Tennessee. Most of them are either in the middle of the country or they are very small, and all of them are less populated. And I believe that the names haven't been translated because the French just haven't heard so much about them, and this is why they just didn't need a translation. So there are 2 different shades of blue, which depend on whether the name of the state starts with a vowel or a consonant. This is mostly important for the prepositions because one of the prepositions we will use is O, and if the next word starts with a vowel, then it will sound bad. You wouldn't say O Indiana. At least it sounds bad to the French ear. And because of that, you will say en Indiana or dans l'Indiana. In French, there is a general rule that grammar is very important, but if it sounds bad, we're okay with bending grammar a little bit so that it sounds better. So this is why I've made 2 different colors on this map to help you understand the preposition that you need to use with each of these states. So the states in dark blue are the ones with starts with a consonant, and you can use the preposition au, or you can say dans le. So for example, you will say au Nevada or dans le Nevada, dans le Montana, le Wyoming, le Colorado, le Nouveau-Mexique, le Dakota du Nord, le Dakota du Sud, dans le Nebraska ou au Nebraska, le Kansas, au Texas, dans le Missouri, dans le Minnesota, le Wisconsin, le Michigan, le Kentucky ou dans le Kentucky, le Tennessee ou le Mississippi, le Maine, le New Hampshire, le Vermont, le Massachusetts, le Connecticut, le New Jersey, le Delaware, and le Maryland. If that sounds weird to you, it's because I pronounce them with the French pronunciation, which unfortunately is something you have to do, otherwise the French just might not understand you. The other category of masculine states are the ones which starts with a vowel, and as I was saying, you can still use dans le or you can say en in order to avoid the clash between the O and the first vowel, because en will allow you to make a liaison. So you will be able to say en Oregon or dans l'Oregon, en Idaho, en Utah or dans l'Utah, en Arizona, en Alaska, en Oklahoma or dans l'Oklahoma, en Iowa, en Illinois, en Arkansas or Arkansas, some people pronounce the S, en Alabama or dans l'Alabama, en Indiana, en Ohio or dans l'Ohio. So in order to remember it, if they're small and or in the middle and they're not very populated, then they are masculine and the name wasn't translated, so you just have to pronounce it French style. The preposition will change depending on the first letter, but you will always be safe if you say dans le instead of using a preposition. Now we have another two colors on this map, despite having already run out of French genders. First, we have two states in green, Washington and New York. And as you can realize easily, these states also have the same names as major cities. So in English, we solve this possible confusion by saying NYC, New York City, and Washington, D.C. So we assume when we say just New York or just Washington that these are the states. But in French, it's actually the opposite, because we hear a lot more about American cities than about American states. So if you say in French New York or Washington, we will assume that you speak about the city. In fact, nobody would say New York City in French, we would just say New York. So in order to make it clear when you speak about the state, what we are going to say is l'état de, and we will use the preposition dans. Actually, you could technically say dans l'état de for any state. You could say dans l'état de Californie, dans l'état de Alabama, but that is so long, so most people don't. But for New York and Washington, you just don't have a choice. Otherwise, it's confusing. So we will say dans l'état de New York and dans l'état de Washington. And then, because l'état is masculine, we will default to masculine for those states. So we will say l'état de New York est beau, not l'état de New York est belle. Finally, the last color on this map is yellow. There are two states on this map. Those states are quite small, so we just basically treat them as if they were cities. This happened often with islands as well. So Rhode Island and Hawaii both are islands, and this is why we are going to use the preposition a as if it was a city. So we will say a Hawaii, a Rhode Island, and a Puerto Rico. Now for island and for cities, because la ville and l'île are both feminine, we will default to feminine for these states unless we have another reason to call them masculine. So for example, we will say Hawaii est belle, not Hawaii est beau, and Rhode Island est belle, not Rhode Island est beau. But we would say Puerto Rico est beau because the word Porto in Spanish is masculine, and because of that we kept the gender in French. As you can see, it is a lot easier to learn the state's name this way than to try to learn a list. But if we're honest, even this way it can be tricky to remember all 50, especially if you don't use them very often. But here is the real good news. If you don't use them very often, then you don't need to learn them at all. Just make sure you learn the ones that are relevant to you. Please let me know in the comment which state names you are definitely going to learn because perhaps you live there, or you like to talk about there, or your family is from there. Now, even if you don't use a word very often, sometimes you might just need it. You might just need to tell about a vacation that you had in that particular state, for example. So how do you deal with that? The solution that I have found works the best is to research this word just before you actually need it, rather than try to learn all of the French vocabulary up front, because as you can guess, like this doesn't work. And even if you successfully learned all of the French vocabulary up front, by the time you need it, that word in particular, you will have forgotten about it. So it is better to just research it right before you need it. I've been using this method very successfully in my life, and sometimes I've even had some adventure in this way. For example, when I lived in Germany, I had some renovation work to do in my flat and I needed to buy some tools. But I only knew the name of the tools in French, and Amazon would only understand English words or German words, but not French words, so I had to learn some new vocabulary. I wanted une décolleuse, but I didn't know the name of that in English, and the dictionary told me that the name is stripper. Now, a good tip is to use Google Image, especially if you're looking for an item, because Google Image will tell you for sure if you have the right word. And well, this is not a tool. I did have better luck with wallpaper stripper as a keyword on Google, and that's when it hit me that as a child, I had very often seen my dad with a stripper. Like I said, learning the words that you need all the time up front and learning the words that you need rarely just when you need them is the method that works the best, and you can even have some cool adventures in this way. This is just one principle of learning vocabulary effectively. All the other principles of learning French vocabulary are in this video, and I recommend you watch it next. I'll see you there.